Hi,
Hi,
who are you?
I am Almar and I'm an addict.
What kind of addict?
Attention addict. I love attention. Any attention.
And what are we doing here?
We're making a podcast.
What is that about?
It's about things like people's stories, how they ended up where they are, ended up doing what they're doing. And it was supposed to be about something else, but I ended up with this.
Who are those people?
These are my friends. Basically my network, because I wanted to make a show about me, but I didn't really have anything to talk about. So I ended up looking at the network. The network was interesting, so I kind of thought, okay, I can maybe make something with this.
So, do you have already a name for this podcast?
Yeah, it's called The Bunker. How the hell did we end up here?
And how is it connected to the theme?
How the hell did we end up here? So basically people's stories and how they went from A to B and then to C, and with coincidences, decisions, traumas, basically anything that moves you to the direction or the point where you are.
So, how often are you gonna have this podcast?
I'm not sure, but maybe like two times a month, 3 times a month.
So, do you take yourself seriously enough? Do you have some sponsors?
Yeah, like every other professional podcast, then of course I have sponsors. I have the Oat Bar. That's the greatest thing in Karlin. Sells amazing oatmeals and skyr. Everything is handmade. And it's available from 8 to 3 during the weekdays, closed on the weekends, but you can order on Volt as well. And it's a place that you really want to go. Healthy, yet tasty.
Sounds
And
good.
then I have a company called Alfred. It's alfred.cz. It's a place where you can find jobs. You can set up a job watch. You can get notified whenever there's a cool job coming along. And it's a great solution for anyone who is either looking for a job or wants to change jobs, because you can find the right job without spending time looking for it. It's available in Czech, English, and Slovak. And check it out. Alfred.cz. So yeah, those are the guys.
Cool.
On this episode, we're talking to Kraig. Kraig is the American Barber in Prague. I became his customer a few years ago and I started visiting his salon. And I soon realized that Kraig is not anything that could be called average. He has endless stories and ideas, and sometimes when I left the barbershop I felt that my brain had been on overload, but in a pleasant way. So when I decided to make this podcast, Kraig was one of the first names on my list. I wanted to explain to you guys how a third-generation barber from Kentucky in the US relocates as a 49-year-old to Prague to become a barber Santa at Christmas, front-page figure on magazines, Dancing with the Stars, and Eurovision, of all things, and a lot more. When we started talking, I had a script, but I soon realized that we were not going to follow that script. We were just going to talk the way that it had to be talked. And Kraig went all over the place, and I tried to follow. We ended up talking so long that I have to split this up to 2 episodes. So in the first episode, we focus on Kraig's life in the US, his career, childhood, and how he fought depression and heart disease just to make the move that he had to make to open a new chapter in his life here in Prague. Welcome to the show, Kraig. Great to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Almar.
Yeah, how do you like my view?
The view's awesome. Getting to watch the sunset over a beautiful Prague castle. Hard to beat that view.
Yeah, especially in a place called the Bunker.
Yeah, my bunker is more like a bunker cellar, so I don't have your view.
Yeah. It was funny, Kraig, when I was preparing yesterday, I was for this, I was thinking about, I remember quite well how we met. Do you recall that?
Yeah, we were at a networking group at the Bourbon Bar. And, I'm definitely a bourbon guy. But I noticed you had an awesome beard. Since I'm a barber, I went and handed you my card and told you needed somebody to take care of that.
Yeah, I remember you were talking to a beautiful Ukrainian girl. And I thought I'll move in, but then I ended up with your business card, and I never saw the girl again. But it was interesting because, as you said, it was a networking event, and when I was preparing last night, then I was thinking about what you actually, I've known you now for a few years, what it is that you stand for in my mind, and somehow you're like a switchboard or a connector somehow, because while I was preparing for this, I see on your Facebook page, Kraig is live. And then I checked what that was, and then I saw Kraig was live with the president, the former president. What is this?
Yeah, I've gotten to know President Klaus over the last couple of years, and I was live with him last night. I was at a concert, so I was not the only one live with him. But he's a big jazz fan, and when he was in office, he had 91 jazz events at the castle. He still has this regular event that he always invites me to, and gives us a chance to catch up. But yeah, last night, I mean, it's always great music, but it was really exceptional. Like some real jazz legends playing last night, so I decided to live stream a little bit of it.
So that was the president of the Czech Republic prior to the current one.
Yes, he was 2 terms president, and he was also prime minister, and I think originally he was the finance minister.
Interestingly, Kraig, then last weekend I saw you live with a guy from Hells Angels at the Burger Fest.
Well, he's not with Hells Angels, but he... Yeah, he's a well-known chef from Germany. He looks like he's with the Hells Angels. No, Carl's an awesome guy I met. I get all kind of characters coming in the barbershop. He was visiting from Munich, but Carl is probably one of the top chefs in Germany. He does his food shows. And he was kind enough to come do a party with me where he does it, as you saw it, with Jack Daniels and fire. And so we've done a few cooking shows together. Mm-hmm. I'm the experienced amateur, but he's the pro.
Yeah, but it's such an interesting thing, Kraig, because I've gone to some events. I went to your birthday. I've been to where you have your friends around, and it's the whole rainbow of people and from everywhere and so on. It's quite interesting. Anyway, I wanted to kind of figure out then, and that's the reason why I have you here. How does someone from Kentucky end up in Prague, opening a barbershop, acting as Santa at Christmas, doing introduction of Eurovision TV shows, which you probably didn't even know what was when you came here, and grill shows on YouTube and grill festivals and stuff like this. So maybe if you could tell me a little bit your background, where you're from and so on.
Well, I'm from the southern part of the U.S., originally Kentucky. And the South is known for its hospitality, and you don't really know a stranger. Everybody smiles, makes eye contact. And I'm a 3rd-generation barber. There's 4 generations actually now. And for over a century, my family's been barbers. And it's one of those things, it's a real guy's atmosphere. You have all kind of people coming in your chair. It's a level playing field when somebody's in your chair. And you get to know guys really well. Like I've had over 30 clients visit me from Atlanta, where I was living before I moved to Prague. I was in Atlanta for 25 years. My brother and nephew have the barbershop there now. But I've had, like I said, over 30 of my clients that I did in Atlanta visit me here in Prague. A couple of them made me feel old. I'd given them their first haircut. And then other guys you just known for years. But if guys are coming in every 2 or 3 weeks for 5 years, 10, 25, 30 plus years, you get to know the guys really well. Mm-hmm. And it's, a rainbow, a wide swath of people. And I don't know, I'm more than a bit attention deficit. I have a lot of interest and I pursue, and I'm always asking people. And it just opens a lot of doors, and you meet a lot of different connections, a lot of interesting people.
But how was it there back in Kentucky when you were born? I mean, what kind of life was that? Was it like a farm life or rural or?
It was a really unique situation, and I appreciated it growing up, but I didn't fully appreciate it until I was leaving home and realized how unique and special a situation it was. My father was well-known barber, and people traveling from even other states for him to do their hair. But we lived in a subdivision in a cul-de-sac, but behind us is where the farm started. So we had about 12 acres of land with stables and a lake, and from behind there you could go riding horses for miles, shooting our guns out the back door, and all the fun redneck activities. But then you could hop in a car and be downtown Louisville in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's just under 1 million people. So you had a mix of the suburbs, the country, and the city. Mm. And it's very difficult to find that setup anywhere.
Yeah,
so,
this is what, the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, well, I was born in, listeners here. Yeah. But yeah, 60s and 70s. And it was a good time, because a lot of this stuff is lost. I mean, you can't do things now that you could do back then growing up. Our summer camp, our summer vacation, Mom locked the doors. They'd come back at dinner time, go out and find something to do. Mm-hmm. Now we had plenty to do. We had stables and horses, you go as ongoing BB gun wars with each other, running around all summer. It was all year long. You never stopped. Mm. But now you'd have the police out, and you could go running around the neighborhoods because you didn't have to worry about people nabbing the kids and stuff. You didn't have school shootings, although there's plenty of guys I know that would have guns in their cars because they've been hunting in the morning. So it was just a completely different time. And some of my friends here, especially younger, from the American TV and movies, see like where the teenagers are cruising in their cars and stuff like that. I'm like, well, yeah, we did that.
That's how it was.
Yeah, and not all kids are spoiled getting their cars for their 16th birthday. Most of us had to save up and buy a little junker and try to get it fixed up. But you've been to the U.S. It's not pedestrian friendly. You got to drive everywhere. But no, you had that freedom and that flexibility, which everything is more and more regulated, and you can't do that as much. So yeah, it was a good time to grow up. Yeah.
And what about because when I come to your barber shop, I always hear this most amazing music, like old rock stuff, and you grew up on this stuff, right?
Well, yeah. And then, anything in my shop, I try to do the stuff that I love and that I know about. And it's more than just a haircut. It's more like an experience. You're in there for a while, So I like blues, I like jazz, I like all this stuff. But classic rock from '60s, especially the '70s, is my thing. And now, which I showed you, last couple of times, a stereo system I have in there now by another sponsor. There's bespoke speakers. Yeah, some of the guys will just hang out to listen to music. Yeah, some of the musicians have played in there have not heard their music as good as they've heard it coming through that speaker system. Yeah, but yeah, I just.
But did you see any of those legendary bands?
There's no telling how many that I saw. I really wish I'd have kept like a little journal. There's some people even do for their wine tasting, they keep the labels and make notes. I wish I'd have done that because I can't remember half of them. But yeah, I saw a lot of those as a kid, and then one of my clients in Atlanta, they're against one of my connections at the time. He was a manager for Ticketmaster and then Live Nation, and God, there's no telling how many tickets he gave me over the years. Probably $8,000 worth of tickets or more, and it'd be like last minute, hey, not sold out. You want to go? And it might be classic rock, it might be country, it might be Yanni playing or something. Be like, well, hell yeah, I'll go out there and check it out.
So what was the biggest thing you saw? Did you of these classic rock bands? Was there any?
Well, the ones that stand out the most. My first concert was Aerosmith. Yeah. And in the '70s, and I've got two older brothers who are my best friends, and my oldest brother, we had to drive to another city to see it. So that was in the mid '70s, and then Fleetwood Mac. And then probably one of the best productions I saw back from then was Alice Cooper. And that's when it was like a Broadway show and concert. It was a massive production, but it was really, really cool to see. But now there's some great, and now what's cool is a lot of these guys that are touring again, or maybe again and again and again, and they're still touring just because of the love of it. They don't necessarily need the money. And they maybe take more time between gigs.
Yeah.
So they might be hanging out in Prague for a while, or hanging out wherever they're at, so they can kind of rest up a bit and enjoy. Because I've had some of the guys in the shop, and some of them, if they're going, they maybe got in the morning, and then they're leaving within 2 hours or so after the show to the next city. They don't have time to see stuff too much. But some of the older guys, they're pretty, they're laid back. They don't have anything to prove, really. And they're pretty open, most of them.
Yeah. How, and so you start barbering, if that a word, barbering.
Yeah.
You start barbering in Kentucky, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, my grandfather started in 1914, and, traditional barbershop. And then that's how my dad started, traditional barbering. And in the 60s, all that stuff started changing quickly and into men's hairstyling. And you either did that or you were not going to be with a job, which is coming soon now. So the traditional barbering and the styling's a bit different. And what really kicked that in was when the Beatles came to the U.S. And it sounds funny, but you only had 3 networks in the U.S., and they would go off at midnight to listen to your band that you wanted. Now it was really small when the Beatles came. I don't remember that so much, but you would have to call the radio station to talk to the DJ and request if they would play a song for you. Or you had to go and buy the album. But it wasn't like you're going to jump on the internet or go see your favorite band and stuff. And a lot of them might not come to your city, so if you wanted to see them, you might have to travel to the next state or something to see them. So now there's so much competition for whatever field and so much information for everybody to get a hold of. But back then, you're like, oh, okay, these are the big world superstars. All the networks are covering it. And people went nuts, especially the younger. And then, girls fainting and stuff like that. Well, obviously the guys were like, well, shit, I want to, I want some of that, so I'm going to grow my hair like that. And that started, they were known as the mop tops. And actually, because my hair's got so long now, their hair was not as long as mine is now. But compared to those classic styles, it was longer. And you had this generation coming, they wanted to do that. And then you had the hippie movement come in, and the guys coming back from Vietnam, and guys weren't getting their hair cut so often. And if they were getting their really short classic cuts, it was only because they were in the military. So you didn't see. And that got everything evolving. So my dad was one of the leaders in that in the U.S. So I remember growing up, I didn't want to go I hated school from day one. I like to learn, but I don't fit in the traditional classroom so well. Yeah, I remember especially before you start school, getting to run around the barbershop, have a good time. And I'll never forget my first big letdown. My dad took me to first grade, first day of school. And I'm like, I don't want to go. He's like, look, buddy, give it 2 weeks. If you don't like it, you just come to work with me. Assuming at 6 years old, I'm going to forget about it in 2 weeks. But 2 weeks later, I'm kind of like, I'm out of here, suckers. And then he's like, sorry, buddy, you got at least 12 years of this. Like when you tell a 6-year-old you had 12, like, oh my God, no, But so anyway, I grew up around it. And, both my brothers and I as kids, we'd work around the shop some, for some money, and pick up things. And then I guess I was, maybe 14 or so, I decided I wanted, to be a barber, hairstylist. So I started going to school for it while I was in school. We had vocational training, which you don't have much in the U.S. now. You could go for part of your school day if you wanted to be a mechanic or a woodworker or anything like that. And hairstyling was one of the things, too. So I would go to that during the day, and then I'd go work at the barbershop after that. But, yeah, I've been doing it since I was a kid.
And there was never any other, you never wanted to be anything else?
No, I've got tons of interests. That's why I get into so many different things, generally creative stuff. But no, I'd have a hard time. I have worked for other people before for little bits at a time. It doesn't go well, you know. I like there's creativity. It's a very, very social business too. And that's one of the things I like about it. You meet so many different people. And that's how I got into doing some of these interviews too. It's like, I think in a way I've been interviewing people for 44 years that I've been cutting hair. But anyway, yeah, I grew up around it, and then so both my brothers, you know, got into it, and I was the youngest, but I was actually the one to get in first, and yeah, I've done it ever since.
But you moved then later on.
Yeah, well, like I said, I grew up in Kentucky, and that's where my dad's shop was, and then you had the recessions hit in the 70s and 80s. In Louisville at that time was a blue-collar town, like Ford and GE, and it got hit hard. So Atlanta was on the rise, and my brothers and I ended up moving down there over a period of time. We all ended up down there, and yeah, ended up getting a shop down there.
But that's a completely different world from Kentucky, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it was growing up in Louisville. Like I said, it's not quite 1 million people, but you know, you got relatives there, all these friends, contacts. My father, and you grow up somewhere, you know people wherever you go. And it didn't fully dawn on me when I moved to Atlanta. God, I was there probably at least 1.5 years or 2 years before I was out one day, like at a store, and somebody called out my name that, you know, recognized me. And I'm like, wow. It was like a realization. I'm like, man, I missed that. I didn't really think about that, which was also something I was thinking about when I moved to Prague. I'm like, how long is it going to be before I'm out and run into somebody that I know in a country that I don't know anybody, you know, moving here. And the first day I moved here, when I'd been here like 6-7 months previous working on the paperwork for my visa, and I saw a thing like on Expat CZ, I think, and a group of people were getting together at the Globe. I'm like, what the hell? I'll go, you know, got some time while I'm doing paperwork. I'll go meet some people. And then, yeah, so that was like in November, and I moved here in May the following year. And no sooner did I drop the bags off at the flat that I was, you know, renting, and walked out the door, you know, and I'd been here like maybe an hour at the time from the airport, you know, dropped this off, step out of the street, and a guy yelled down, "Hey, man, how's it going?" And it was a guy that I'd met at the Globe. And I'm like, you know, I'll take that as a good omen.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take that as a good sign. And then really within a few months, a lot of people thought I'd lived here for years. Because I didn't know anybody before I moved here, but the guy that I rented a chair at his hair salon, I'd met him online, you know, to see if I could even get a job over here. But so I had to really get out and hustle to get the clients the first time.
Yeah, and hustle you did. But you came here earlier for a visit. You came here in '92.
Yeah, you know, that was growing up during the Cold War. You know, you always wonder, you know, what's on the other side of the wall. And I've always questioned things, whether it was a teacher or especially the government, anything like that. And, you know, you get plenty of propaganda everywhere, you know, whether it be the U.S. or former Soviet Union. And it was kind of funny because the only exposure we really had to Slavic women were like on the news and stuff, the little babushkas or the steroid pumped kind of manly women in the, you know, some of the Olympic sports.
Yeah, weightlifting.
Yeah, I mean, and then because the Beatles song, "Those Ukraine Girls Really Knocked Me Out, Leave the West Behind." I'm like, what in the hell are they singing about? And then I'm like, oh shit, that's what they're saying. Now I see. With the Cold War, might have gone the other way if we'd have seen that. So anyway, like everybody, totally shocked when the Soviet Union collapsed, and as it happened so fast. And I'm like, wow, I'd like to really see what's, you know, besides what I've been told, I want to see what's happening. And obviously, you know, depending on where you lived in the former Soviet Union, it would be different, you know. But when I saw or heard about the Velvet Revolution and that they, put a writer in office as president. And I was like, man, that'd be a cool place to check out. And I've always been interested in the arts. I studied classical painting and that. And I was like, well, maybe I'll go check out the Art Academy over there and see what's happening. And at the time, one of my sister-in-laws is from Vienna, or my ex-sister-in-law from Vienna. So I'm like, I'll go to Prague, I'll check this out, see what it's like, and then go to Vienna. And obviously, before the internet, and you couldn't find a lot out. Lonely Planet probably only had a few pages, or 4 or 5 maybe, on Czech Republic. So I'm like, all right, what the hell? I'm going to go by myself, check it out. I heard that families rented rooms, and it was almost like an early form of Airbnb. And there were some different little offices people would set up, and one of them right on Old Town Square across from the astronomical clock. And I came in November, and these days get short, and take a cab, get out. I was like, okay, shit, all right, now I got to find a place to sleep. And anyway, found a room through them, hit it off with the family, and they didn't speak much English, but their neighbor was retired from the government travel office. And since I was by myself, she decided she needed to take care of me. And she took me out every day for almost 2 weeks, showing me every aspect. I really wish I'd have kept a journal, because unfortunately she's passed away. But instead of going to clubs and stuff at night, I just sit around with her and this family. She'd translate. We drink Moravian wine, get to know each other, and I saw how awesome the people really are. And I think it's very unfortunate. A lot of people aren't here long enough, or they don't put themselves out enough to go make the first step to the Czechs, because they're incredible. They're just initially going to be more reserved, especially like compared to a Southerner. But, just great people. But I had such a positive introduction to the Czech people, and obviously how beautiful the city is. It always stuck with me. Timing at that time wasn't my time to come here. I was in a relationship with the ex-wife and that at that time. But it just always stuck with me.
But and then, but eventually you came back, and I mean, was that just I was thinking about it because you told me that you get a divorce, and you decide to move, and you moved to Prague. I mean, it's a U-turn, in a way.
Oh, yeah. Well, it wasn't, because I was divorced for several years. I can't remember. It's a little bit of a blur. But I was divorced for several years before I moved over here. It wasn't like it was just a midlife crisis thing or anything. Even as a kid, I always wanted to be somewhere else, even before I'd ever been anywhere. I don't know, it's weird. I just always wanted to be somewhere else. And when I got to Europe, that trip, I'm like, man, I feel more at home here. So I had been divorced for several years, maybe 5 or more. I can't remember. But what really triggered that was I had always wanted to live somewhere else. Besides the divorce, I had a very lengthy illness before that, which gives you a different perspective on things. And it just, the 49th birthday depressed the hell out of me. And most of my family lived about 100. My grandpa cut hair till he was 85. And I'm like, I never liked Atlanta that much. Some people love it. It's just whose eyes you're looking, through. And I'm like, shit, I'm not where I want to be. And these years are going by fast. I don't have kids, divorced. I'm like, if I don't do something now, it ain't never going to happen. So within a day or so of that birthday, I found online Expats CZ. They had some forums on there, and I looked, and there was only 2 native English-speaking hair salons in the whole city, which really means the whole country. No barbershops. So 2 British guys, and a really nice guy named Jonathan owns Head Salon over at Palettskale. So I emailed them both, and I'm like, is it possible for an American to get a visa, to do this? Because most countries, unless you were married to somebody from there or companies sent you there, it'd be very, very difficult. So he's like, yes, you can, and I'll hold the chair till you can move here. So
and that's just one shot, 100%. I mean, that was on the first email that you sent,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I haven't been there since 1992, and I've only been there once. So I'll go take a visit. So I went a few weeks later. I flew over to kind of meet them and see, before I left a clientele of 25 years. and decided to check it out. I'm like, okay, no, this is awesome. Every bit as much as I remember, so I'm going to give it a go. And then I had to come back again that November to do more paperwork. All that stuff. They love their stamps. They can get kind of tricky with the papers. But no, I started the move immediately, and I got here about 2.5 months before my 50th birthday. And, my brothers, everybody was very supportive. My mother was nervous at first. I'm the baby.
50-year-old baby.
Yeah. But everybody she, mentioned it too. They're like, well, I've been to Prague, and that's the most beautiful place I've ever been. It's great, But people my brothers saw it immediately. They knew that I'd be happier here. And then everybody I know that knows me, especially from before, they know I'm supposed to be here.
Uh-huh.
I can't explain half the stuff that's happened to me here.
Oh.
So, no, there's no place else I'd want to live.
So it sounds like it was a good decision to move from the U.S. to Prague, but it's a decision of strength. And it's interesting you say that it's not like this traditional midlife crisis. Just wanted to explore the world and have some adventures. You mentioned some depression and these kind of things. I mean, and as I said earlier, it's a U-turn. Well, how did you get the courage to do this?
Well, like I said, it's something I'd always wanted. Again, as a small child, I always wanted to be somewhere else. It's funny. But again, as I mentioned, I'd kind of been through a long-term illness in my mid-late 30s for years. And as I was coming out of that, I finally could start traveling in that again. I mean, for years, like I haven't really brought this out in interviews before, but I've got a milder form of bipolar disorder. But when it hit, it was anything but mild. And the depression hit me. It just wiped me out for years. And it took years and years to find a medicine that would work. So, after that, it led to other health issues. And you have, doctors, because a lot of the clients were doctors too. And when they're telling you that you may not be around that long, that gives you a different perspective on life. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I really could have cared less, And then when I finally, years later, started getting better, go at it again. And I don't have any problem talking. I've been able to actually help quite a few people because they felt comfortable enough to talk to me, whether it be clients or other friends. And it's still taboo to talk about any kind of mental illness a lot of places. And Czech Republic and Prague would be one of those places. It's still fairly taboo for a lot. But I've had people that friends that have been able to talk to me, ask me about things. But
it's interesting. I have my own experience of going to therapists both here and elsewhere because of issues that have happened in my life, and it's an interesting thing here that it's by man it's considered as a weakness. I don't know anyone who went into a therapist and came out worse, and it's some of the best money that I have spent in my life have been on this kind of service. But you say that. Like 2 years in a blackout, or that you don't really recall. How do you exist in that? I mean, does someone take care of you?
I was still able to work some, and like I said, a lot of my clients knew me so well that they were, okay with it, But I would have to maybe leave suddenly. Of course, I was working with one of my brothers. Everybody, knew me, and like I said, hell, it was so medicated, so heavy for the first couple of years. Like I said, there's blank spots, and then I was married, so obviously the wife was helping. And obviously that's another, leads to divorce because this is tough on the partner as anyone else. So to see you go through stuff, and as much as I like to be out doing all kind of stuff. I couldn't do anything hardly for years. In the like U.S. culture too. It's kind of funny when you have people, like if you look at a tourist guide on the country that you're from, and you see it through other people's eyes. So like people, especially in the South, like, hey, how you doing? Well, that's really just a greeting. You're not really asking. But for Americans, unless it was a really close friend, you really wouldn't say if you're having a bad day anyway.
Yeah.
So clients would ask, how you doing? I'm like, fine. But they could see it in your eyes. They're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
So how you doing today? So, yeah, them, and I was very active in my church. A lot of people back home were, they were all supporting me to help me get through it. But it took years. And like I said, that'll change because I had, again, I've always been a barber, but I started getting heavy into chef training in my 30s. I did with one of the top Italian chefs in the world. I spent a summer at his villa in Tuscany. Took a boulangerie course at Cordon Bleu in Paris, different chefs in the U.S. I never really wanted to work in a restaurant so much. I'm more of a built for comfort, not for speed. The hectic pace of a kitchen wouldn't work so well with me. But anyway, I had that, and I also studied classical painting. I had galleries interested in my paintings, and everything was really kicking in gear, and it was all gone in an instant. So that took years and years.
So that's prior to
that, prior to that. So that just wiped things out for a long time. And then, many years later, I started doing a bit better. Like I said, I got, the divorce and stuff, and doing on my own. And I loved to travel, but I couldn't travel for years. And then, you finally start getting healthy enough to start doing things again. You get energy to do things again. And you're like, okay, I want to get as most out of life as I can. I want to give as much as I can. It sounds kind of maybe cliche, but I was like, hey, I want to live life to its fullest. Now, not every day does that happen. Some days you're tired. Some days you get more stuff done than others. But for a long time, I was kind of like, hey, if somebody were to write a book about me or make a movie about me, would it be worth reading? Or would anyone want to watch it? Would I want to watch it? So I want to push it as much as I can. Again, it sounds kind of funny sometimes, but I'm like, no, obviously doesn't happen every day, but sometimes it is every day here. You never know what's, I just keep trying to see where, okay, not every door is going to open and not everything's going to happen. But again, I can't explain half the stuff that's happened to me here.
No, and I see that around you. I mean, all the years that I've known you, you never stop to amaze me. But these kind of issues, that to live with those kind of illness I mean, sometimes the illness is both the poison and the
cure.
Yeah, because it creates certain things, and it sounds like you're a little bit artistic, creative, etc.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's the benefit to it too. Now I wouldn't trade it. I sure as hell would not want to go through the dark part again. But again, most writers, artists, comedians, most of them have that. And a lot of the creativity comes from the depression because you're locked in your own head so much. So, and that's actually when you start getting medicated, the frustrating part is a lot of those medications will dull that a lot. That's why a lot of people quit taking their medications. But for me, it took years and years and years to find, I can't remember how long actually because a lot of it was a blur, but to find a medicine that would work. Some people the first one might work. But then you see U.S. is one of the few countries, they advertise all these freaking medications. And it's like, side effects may include blah, 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 blah,
really
blah,
text.
And then I'm like, oh, yeah, shit, that's what they mean. Because, all these side effects. Like one was vertigo. I was like sitting there, I just fell out of the freaking chair and I'm trying to crawl to the bed. And I'm like, oh, evidently that's what a side effect with this. Hey, it is, So, anyway, now it's well under control. The talk therapy, the therapist, that is just awareness is a big part of it.
Yeah. And
then, but it does add a lot of creativity. So here, when I have time, I try to, at least sketch. I want to do more paintings. And when I was originally coming here, I was like, okay, I'm going to cut hair part-time and I'm going to paint part-time. and then the hair thing is just taken off so much. I don't have as much time for the painting at the moment. I will work that into my schedule more though.
So you have kind of learned to live with this. I mean, to kind of have it on your side.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I said, no. I mean, everybody's got something to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, now for a lot of people, any kind of mental illness, like I said, it can be taboo or whatever because people can't see it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't expect anybody to understand it if they haven't had a loved one involved with it or something.
Yeah.
Like you'll see, especially in the U.S., occasionally somebody threatening to jump from an overpass, and then people stuck in traffic. Jump. I'm like, yeah, well, if that was your,
Nephew,
mother, brother, nephew, whoever, well, they're just wanting attention. I'm like, yeah, but if that's to the point that they're doing to get attention, they're not in their right mind. They need some help, you know. So,
but did you because the bipolar, then you kind of go down and up, and
no,
you have these
then you
fluctuations.
go up. But now,
what is it to be low? I mean, how?
Oh God, that because a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I've been depressed." I'm like, "Yeah, but have you been depressed for years?" Or yeah, you just like break out crying for whatever, different thing. I mean, the depression, like I said, I hope it never gets to where it is as bad as it was years ago. The highs are freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Now there's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, and I have the lesser. So you're not mania; it can go hypomania. So full blown mania, you might think you're Jesus Christ or something like that. Hypomania, people want to be around you because you're a lot of fun. And it's not like you're trying to bullshit anybody, but you get so excited about stuff, people get excited for you. And it can lead to lots of creativity and stuff, but you learn after a while with therapy that you need to be careful with that, because if you're going up, you will go down some, and the higher you go up, the lower you'll go down. But it's led to a lot of interesting
Memories.
interesting things. Oh yeah.
Anything in particular that you remember from a high that was kind of like a crazy thing and resonates as a pleasant thing?
Well, it got me into like doing some crazy shit. I was still, I've always looked for adventure, even as a little kid. And even though this didn't really hit me till I was about 37, I can see after that I've had it since I was really young. It just wasn't as strong, but I'm like, oh, that explains some stupid decisions. I don't want to use it as a crutch. We're all going to make some stupid decisions, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, okay, that I can maybe live with that a little bit more now because I understand why I was stupid enough to do that. But yeah, again, you can get excited about stuff and without being manipulative, get people on your side to go do it. So hell, I was like, I didn't have kids, but I was married, and I decided I was going to move to Wyoming. And I had a friend out there that was in Jackson Hole, beautiful area and stuff. Oh shit, I didn't really have any money or plan, but I'm going to go out there and start. And then told my wife, like, hey, when I get it rolling, then you come on out, And at the time, it made a lot of sense. And but I was not in the mental position or the financial position to do that. And at the time, I was on like lithium. So I'm overweight now, but man, it blew me up like a balloon. And I think I was about 265 pounds. And I get out there, of course, not really taking care of myself, got high blood pressure at the time, stuff like that. And I get out there and I didn't really think about it, but you're at altitude up in the mountains. And
so you're moving?
Oh yeah, no, I moved out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And, right outside Yellowstone and stuff, and there was like a friend of mine was living out there part of the year, and there was one barbershop for 50 miles. I'm like, screw it. Yeah, okay, I'll come on out. And yeah, it makes sense, but not really, thought through so well. And I'm driving out there. The car breaks down in the freaking desert. I have to have that towed. And then I get out there, and the buddy really hadn't planned stuff for me to be fully set up. And I made it for the most part of a summer, and the wife came out. We had a good time, but we realized, no, this isn't going to work. And I really, even if I would have wanted to stay out there, I started getting these like dizzy spells and shit. I thought, I was like, well, man, I must have the flu or something. And then finally, it was like my buddy's friend was a pharmacist, and he went and checked my blood pressure. He's like, "You don't have the flu. You're high blood pressure, and you're such high altitude. You're going to have a freaking heart attack. So you're going to have to go. There's nothing you can do but to go to lower, elevation. So that was my little foray into that. And then I was working on trying to go other places and stuff, always trying to get her excited. I'm going to move here or move there. And, but yeah, not well planned.
No.
And so I did a bit more planning for this one, but I still wasn't fully prepared. I couldn't really fully afford to move to Prague when I moved, but I'm like, shit, this is my only chance to try to pull this off. So yeah, that was one of the crazier ones. And then after I was divorced and finally getting healthy enough to really start traveling and, be in my own mind. And after dating a bit in the U.S., and I was with my ex-wife, I think maybe 17 years or something. Dating changed a lot in that time. So then, Match.com and some of these dates, I'm like, I'm not into this so much. I'm not, I think I want a change. And then I'm thinking of From Russia with Love with a James Bond. I'm like, ooh, Slavic women. I think I'm interested. I'd like to investigate this. So I joined. And at the time, again, I get divorced, and you get this extra time. And I probably should have been going to the gym or something, but I joined Russian dating sites. So, it actually was quite fascinating because you got to where you could talk to people all over the world. And, talking to women from all over the former Soviet Union. And you find out a lot about the culture that way. And it was actually quite fascinating growing up again during the Cold War that I could be live chatting with somebody in Siberia, So I'm like, I think I like this. I think I want to go check this out. So I'm like, Ukraine. I think I want to go to, Ukraine. So the first trip over, I was learning some Russian. And I made friends with a Ukrainian guy. I helped him get settled in Atlanta, and he was, trying to teach me a little bit of the language. Really, sharp guy, very focused, 24 years old. He had 2 master's degrees. He was doing his internship. So he goes, hey, you go to Kiev. You can stay with my buddy and his family for at least the first few days, and he'll show you around. Well, he didn't explain to me that his buddy was the complete opposite. And by the time I got off that plane, I was definitely hypomanic. I didn't realize it for a few days, but that trip took its own. At some point, I did keep a journal for that trip somehow, and I need to. I can't let my mother read it, but I need to type that out at some point. Yeah. But it took me, thank God I'd already had all the, therapy before, because after about the 3rd day, I'm like, oh shit, I haven't slept yet, and I don't want to sleep. But so I better really try to pull this in as much as I can. But yeah, the Ukraine trips, I went a couple times. That was a great country, great people. But yeah, that was quite the adventure. And but anyway, came back, and I'm like, man, I like it over there, and I want to start working on the move to go.
And then you sent that email. You find this guy
here.
Yeah.
So again, I contact Jonathan, and so he invited me over. I came, like I said, checked it out, and ended up here, like I said, just a couple months before my 50th birthday. And it's funny, I hadn't done much on social media until up before I was moving here. And at the time, my nephews were still, and niece were a bit younger, and I saw some stories about Facebook, kids putting too much information on and predators after them. So that's actually why I originally joined, and I didn't do too much with it. But moving over here so I could keep track of people and they could keep track of me and help build business over here. I got on doing stuff with that. And then I didn't have many local Facebook friends yet, and I really still didn't know much about it. But usually a lot of times my birthdays, I just want to go somewhere off on my own or whatever and kind of, reevaluate things or whatever. And middle of the afternoon, I put a little post up like, hey, I'm going to be out on Old Town Square tonight. You know, if anybody want to come by for a drink or something. And I had quite a few people, you know, come by. And a couple of them, we've become really good friends. And one of them, they're, you know, Czech that grew up here. We're sitting out there, and then Caffrey's brings me a complimentary bottle of champagne and stuff like that. And she's like, how long have you lived here? I'm like, I don't know, about 9 or 10 weeks now. She goes, I grew up here. Nobody's going to bring me champagne and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm supposed to be here. You know, what can I say? You know, I was just constantly going out and introducing myself and meeting people. And then actually 7 weeks, I got my, I did my paperwork in 2010. I got the visa came through in like February 2011. And then, you know, you don't know when it's going to come through. So you can't start the full plan until, so, okay, I've got the visa now, so I'll plan within a month or two to come. And then I had the surprise, I had to have heart surgery. So I had to, you know, it got, you know, I was like, shit, something's wrong. I'm like, trying to walk from my car to my apartment, you know, not very far. And I'm like, shit, I'm out of breath, you know.
And this is just before you...
7 weeks before I moved here, you know. And I'm like, hoping it's something else. I'm like, and then you WebMD, which is one of the worst things you can do, but none of it sounded good. I'm like, shit, it's going to be hard to get around. I can't hardly walk
Everything you find online leads to death.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what it is.
Well, I wasn't too far off. So, you know, I waited about a week, and each day was getting worse and worse. And then it was like really obvious. And I was still stupidly like the night before I went to the hospital, you know, then it shifts to my chest and my jaw's tingling, and I'm still like, oh, please, I don't need this shit. So I go to work the next morning, and I'm working with one of my brothers. And of course, I'm white as a ghost, I guess. And one customer comes in, then I'm like, shit, I got to go to the hospital. So I drove, and I lived across from one of the top cardiac centers in the Southeast. I actually walked. First, I went in to make sure my cats were fed, clean the litter box, just in case. And then I go walking across the street to the hospital, and it's hotter than hell outside. There's no telling what I looked like by the time I showed up. And the first entrance I could find, because it was a big complex, was the paternity. So these nurses are putting a couple with their new baby in their car, and I wander up, probably, you know, telling like death warmed over. And I'm like, where do you go for chest pains? You know? And then it was code blue. You get to go to the front of the line. So luckily it wasn't open heart surgery. They had to give me a stent though. But that took me a while to get over that. So then I'm like, okay, I got that done. At least I can still move. But it had me slowed down a little bit when I first moved here. And but I'm like, okay, there's another hurdle to jump.
That's great. I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
I thought I knew everybody. I've heard so much new stuff today that I don't think I actually know you. So this is the end of episode 1 with Kraig. In the second episode, we hear Kraig talk about how he became some sort of an icon here in Prague. We talk American politics, masculinity, fashion, and Eurovision. Stay tuned.